part of the battle wasn't just time, it was mindset, convincing myself that that can be available to me. Just because my parents didn't come from money and can't serve me this like pool of social and financial capital to help get me to where I need to be doesn't mean that I can't take steps to make that for myself.
Yeah.
And that's been the most empowering thing and the most like profound discovery for me because I didn't know that for so many years.
Hello, everybody. This is the Winning in Winnipeg podcast, where I talk to top performing business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and local Winnipeg celebrities. I get to learn who they are and how they think, and I get to hear their perspective about what's really going on in Winnipeg and in their businesses. Today, I've Sandra Hodzic, a business consultant, national speaker, and peer-reviewed author that has more than 15 years experience in corporate and social innovation in both the public and private sector. Sandra spent 11 years as a senior public servant with the government of Manitoba as the social innovation and social finance lead. She spent time as the director of strategic innovation and design with the government of New Brunswick and now helps companies plan for the future by identifying breakthrough ideas, experimenting rapidly, and taking unique solutions to market. I think that we have a lot of issues to dive into. We're not exactly sure where it's going to go, but I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
First time you and I spoke on the phone, it was actually a great conversation and it could have went further, but I really didn't want to waste a lot of our initial conversation, not on the podcast, but
right.
I know that it could go virtually anywhere. I think you have an incredibly interesting background and story and viewpoints about stuff. But let's first give me a little backstory and like, what kind of student were you going through? Are you born and raised Winnipeg?
I was not born in Winnipeg. So I immigrated from former Yugoslavia with my family when I was almost 9 years old. And yeah, they sort of set up shop in Winnipeg, and I've been here with them ever since. I've been tempted to leave a few times, but
we'll get to that.
Yeah, it's really hard. You know, you cross the ocean with your family, and there's this profound sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to just leave now, and also for practical reasons, right? And I love Winnipeg.
How old were you when you came over?
About 9 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's old enough. That's old enough to remember, to be kind of shell-shocked at a big move.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, very connected to the culture as well. I used to go and spend my summers over there. My grandma, my baba's there. And it's important to me. It's something that I hope I can certainly retain. You know, it's such a profound sense of my identity. And I hopefully I don't lose it.
Mm-hmm.
But what kind of a student was I? Mm-hmm. I was a great student in the old country, and I left in grade 2. So school starts and ends a little bit different ages, but I left in grade 2. I was such a great student. I was, I had my little group of great student friends. And when we made the trek over here, everything sort of blew up a little bit.
Okay.
I still had the drive to do better, to do really good, to be that same consistent teacher's pet Sandra, the one that would try extra hard and be so good with words and be so good with numbers and all the pop quizzes. But it took a while. Because I was learning English and I had to be pulled away to kind of learn English when everybody had like the consistent schedule and then new friends and culture, all of that. So I wasn't as good of a student after coming here. And then I kind of found myself again, I was a good student again. And then, the later years, I don't know. I remember just high school being really awkward. I don't know that I was a great student. I went to private school, private religious school. I always kind of felt like something was off, like I didn't really belong there too much. And I know I'm not the only one. So this sense of otherness always followed me and impacted the way that I learned, the way that I spoke out, the way that I communicated what I knew as a student. So it was a weird transitory period, I would say, in the teen years. And even throughout university, like my undergrad, I was still kind of, it was an okay student, a good student, but not as good as I knew I could be. And there
Mhm.
were so many things going on there that impacted that. And it wasn't until my master's that I really like got back to that little child me, if that makes sense, and that tenacity and that focus and that drive and that having things be just so finally felt natural and came back to me. And I just hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
And it felt damn good.
Yeah.
Took a while though.
Coming out of high school, did you know what you want to do?
Oh God, no.
No. What did you go into?
I shouldn't say God, no. I think I had this idea of law, but I wasn't quite sure if that's really for me, only because my mom studied law where they were from.
Mhm.
And everybody always used to tell me, you know, you're so good at constructing arguments. You're so good at like, you're articulate, this and that. And I thought, well, yeah, it makes sense. That's what I should do.
Mhm.
It never occurred to me that I could be or do something else. That was sort of always the plan for me.
Yep.
So I think I wasn't really, I don't know that I had the confidence really. I just thought, yeah, well, I'll do this. I don't know if I can do this. Um, so I never felt that alignment really with like what I felt I needed to do in my core. And that kind of continued on for a long, long time. Even as I was doing my master's, I thought like, have I found myself? And that's part of the reason I reached out is because, you know, I've listened to your previous guests just killing it in Winnipeg and just doing amazing, wonderful things to light our city on fire.
Mhm.
Figuratively, not literally. I know there's actually forest fires going on right now. It's bad. And I thought, for the first time in my life, I actually feel like I'm kind of following in some small footsteps towards that
Mhm.
direction, that path. And I see so much of myself in the words coming out of the many people you've interviewed. And I thought, I want to be a part of that. And I want to piggyback on that. And I want to connect with these individuals. They're so amazing and they're so lit and they're so passionate. And it wasn't until I really went into business for myself very recently
Mhm.
that I feel like, yeah, damn, this was meant for me. This is what I needed to do all along. I need this independence. I need to do it my way. And I know what I have to offer. And so it was a long, long path. Like I kind of knew as a student, kind of didn't. But I feel like I certainly know now.
Mhm. Well, you have a lot of years, a lot of different experiences behind you. And so diving into entrepreneurship, was that something that you'd ever thought about doing before? Was that ever on your mind?
You know, I am a creature of habit, or at least I used to be, and I loved comfort. And that's why I think I stayed in government for as long as I did, is because, you know, the proverbial golden handcuffs. And it was so true. And you have your pension and you have your great vacation and you have your safety net.
Mhm. That's what Joe Biden said when I had him on.
So I didn't ever think that something like entrepreneurship or owning my own business or going against the grain in some way or not having that comfort would be available to me.
Right.
A, because of my personality. B, because I didn't have something to fall back on.
Mhm.
I didn't have my parents serving me, you know, a cushiony um, fund that I could draw upon if I failed. And so I thought, well, I better be quiet, sit, put in my work extra hard, prove myself. And I did all of those things, but there was always something missing.
Yep.
I always felt like, oh my gosh, you know, I just want to scream. Something's just, it's not there yet for me. And so I worked my butt off to build that cushion, right? Financially, otherwise.
Yep.
So, and I knew for the past, I would say 6-7 years, I knew that this was kind of my long-term plan. And I had just taken very concrete steps to get there.
Yeah.
And so even if things don't work out down the road, it's fine because now I do have something to fall back on and I built it up myself. And that feels really, really nice. But yeah, for a long time, I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. I didn't come from a long line of risk takers. There was just too much to lose.
Mhm.
Again, you know, talking about the way my family immigrated here, they had lost so much. They came here with like 120 borrowed dollars from my mom's cousin in Belgrade, Serbia.
Unreal.
And, being government sponsored immigrants, their tickets were paid for. They paid for our family's tickets, plane tickets. In the first 3 months, my parents paid all of that off back to the government. That was the agreement. And like there was always this scarcity mindset. And so, you know, just like the long line of immigrants and the fabric that makes up Manitoba, right? We have so many newcomers with these similar stories of having come from not much. It is possible, and you can kind of switch things around. It just might take time.
That's right.
And in my case, part of the battle wasn't just time, it was mindset, convincing myself that can be available to me. Just because my parents didn't come from money and can't serve me this this pool of social and financial capital to help get me to where I need to be doesn't mean that I can't take steps to make that for myself.
Yeah.
And that's been the most empowering thing and the most like profound discovery for me, because I didn't know that for so many years. I don't fully know it now, but I know it like a lot more, and it's a lot clearer than it used to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Did you, I suppose that, so back then it wasn't as easy to get content in and see other people doing things that you wanted to do, right? So that's one of the nice things about, the content that is out there right now is if one person can do it, anyone can really do it. Circumstantially, but at the same time, it is possible. And now we're seeing a lot of, especially in war-torn countries that are coming over. And yeah, there's not much more than bags on their backs kind of thing.
Right. It's unfortunate, but it's also so awesome because this province, especially with the influx of immigration, and now unfortunately with Ukrainian immigrants making their home here in Manitoba, the circumstance sucks, but man, does that ever fuel your passion and that hard work? And that's why you see immigrants and the kids of immigrants, especially, they're killing it. In many cases, they're surpassing people that had all the resources.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. There's a ton of studies on this too. And I think when you break it down, it kind of does make sense because you have no other option. You can't lose.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Do you follow Gary Vaynerchuk at all?
I don't.
No. He's the son of an immigrant, and his dad just had a liquor store, and all he did was work. And Gary worked in that liquor store till he was like 19, every single day, all day, every single day outside of school. But it's interesting to see and hear about how first and second generation immigrants work compared to once everything's settled and you're established and then you have kids, and kind of how we slowly become softer and softer as we give our kids more, right? And whether or not that's a good thing, I think that's up for debate. But
once it's interesting, it's like once the trauma wears off, some of the motivation wears off too, or gets diluted.
Absolutely.
And so I listened to this little clip. I forget the name now. He's a psychologist out of the States. And he was sort of saying how, trauma's bad, obviously. We're all working on, deep childhood trauma or work trauma or just life trauma. Everybody's traumatized now, right? It's tough. It's a tough time to be alive in so many ways. But especially with individuals that have had something really traumatic happen to them, like escaping war, like in my case, right? Or, abuse or whatever. There's this magical threshold where if you have the right amount of trauma coupled with some degree of self-enlightenment, that's actually a great formula to do great things. Those are actually, in fact, many of our leaders that we see today in the political realm, business leaders, whatever. But once you cross that certain level of threshold and the trauma becomes all encapsulating, paralyzing, leading to self-harm, destruction, substance abuse, that kind of thing, then obviously like you come off on the other line. So he was saying like this combination of trauma and focus really can do great things for us, and it can drive us. And I thought, well, that sounds very toxic, but I guess I kind of get it.
Yeah. Yeah. At the same time that a lot of entrepreneurs or successful people are very insecure, they may also have a sense of superiority at the same time, right? Like it's this weird, exactly what you're describing, this weird mix and fine balance of dichotomous
I'm the best,
values,
but I also suck at the same time.
That's right. Yeah. Or I'm never going to be good enough, but I know that I'm the best.
But I'm the best. Right.
Right. Like it's just, that's what keeps you always going. It's what, you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So you, how did you get mixed up in government? How did you get into the government of Manitoba? Well, how did that start?
It was an accident. So I thought I was on my way to law, right? I was finishing off my undergrad and I thought, well, I'd love to get some hands-on experience, sort of seeing what the legislative process is like and maybe spending some time in court doing some grunt work before I actually go on and do my LSATs, whatever.
Yep.
And so I became a summer student and I thought I would just spend 2 to 3 months there, just making some cash, getting some experience, and I'd be on my way. And I kind of started government in the Department of Families in the legislative unit. And so lots of regulation work, lots of policy program work. And it was at a time where, unfortunately, a lot of the department's time was consumed in these high profile child death cases that were then in front of the courts.
Yep.
And so it was really interesting because I would get to see this unfold on the ground, like hands-on, like this distance. It was really a great learning experience, but it was also really, really messy. And I don't think I was ever prepared for any of that. I'm not a trained social worker. I don't know how to digest that kind of information. And so it was enticing. I was learning more. I had great mentors. I was making some cash. And I thought, well, maybe law school can wait another 3 months. And so I kept following and going to courts and briefing senior officials before they would take the stand on these cases. And I got some hands-on experience doing some regulatory work. It was all exciting. And then those 6 months turned into a year. And I thought, well, I'll still do this.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. But, the interesting discovery was the more time I spent in law courts, the more I realized this is absolutely the furthest thing away from what I should. Like, I don't need to do this. This is not for me. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And I always wanted to do that kind of law, right? Like criminal law. I didn't want to do corporate law. I didn't want to do all the boring stuff, right? So I wanted to be in all the action.
You can't handle the truth.
Right. And then I realized like, no, I hate this. I'm really sad when I set foot in a law court. And I'm so happy now in retrospect that I realized that the way that I did, it was sort of organic and it just came upon me compared to spending a lot of time and money going through that process only to learn afterwards, oh my gosh, I'm not going to use this degree. Yeah. I probably would have used it. I mean, it's still a good degree to have, even if you're not practicing lawyer. But so yeah, I just stayed and I continued and I gained some great experience and I moved to different departments and worked on labor market stuff and things that are more economics focused, which aligns with my master's degree and my business background as well. So it was an interesting time. It was a great experience. I am so grateful for all of the great portfolios I've had a chance to work on, and more importantly, the great people that I've met during my time in government here.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Some amazing leaders and some not so amazing leaders, but it was all such a fantastic learning experience for me.
So in general, how would you describe the real behind the scenes of working within the provincial government?
Interesting question. And I can only speak from my experience.
Absolutely.
So I spent some time sort of buried in department land, working more in policy. And then as I rose through my career, I was sort of taken out and more, I had more visibility around what was going on in the whole of government. So I became a little bit more senior. What's really interesting to see is there's no such thing as the untouchables. We're all just human. And these, mythical individuals that make decisions behind closed doors aren't mythical. They're just people like you and I.
Mhm.
And they have lives and families, and they go to their cottages and they mess up. And, they don't always use fancy words. And some of them are casual and really great. And it really allowed me to demystify that. And it's interesting because if I thought that, having been inside of government, what is it that other people outside of government, the average taxpayer, what do they think happens behind those closed doors?
Right.
And so that's why I think it's really important to lead a transparent civil service, to have an open door policy, to give citizens the opportunity to actually be hands-on and inform the policy that's actually ultimately meant to serve them.
Mhm.
And so I learned that, these individuals don't always have everything figured out. And there's so much dependence and reliance on the civil service, who are essentially the subject matter experts, to feed that great information up. And I think sometimes you think, if a person has a fancy title, right? Like VP, SVP, minister, deputy minister, whatever, right?
Mhm.
That they have it all figured out. And some of them do, and kudos to them, great, good for you. But often they were there for different reasons. They got there for different reasons. Maybe they're great leaders. They're great with people leadership. They're great at getting things done, bringing people together. But that doesn't necessarily translate into them being fantastic subject matter experts, perfectly versed in every single policy around every single subject. And I just didn't know that. The green Sandra starting off in government, as I kind of learned and met these people, I realized, oh my gosh, I am the expert. They're asking me because I spent 6 years in this program area, whereas they're brand new and don't really understand that. And so I think it's really validating for a lot of the hardworking civil servants out there to know that, hey, so much of how government operates actually depends on them. And I think it's a curse and a blessing at the same time. I think a lot of them, unfortunately, are overworked right now. There's a lot going on. Things are shifting, but it's also great because they're needed. And that must be a really nice feeling.
You mentioned what the public must think. So that to me goes back to marketing. It goes to messaging. It goes to media. When you think of the message that government puts out, and we're talking provincially, right? How do you think that how good of a job do you think that the media does in portraying what's really going on in Manitoba?
I think that depends on the government in power, on the issue at hand, and on the news portal. Um, I think that we live in a country, I'm lucky to live in a country where we have separation of media, right, from the way that governments run. Like, you're independent, you have that degree, you could argue, of impartiality
Mm-hmm.
to cover stories and to tell the real deal, right, the way that you've understood it based on fact finding, whatever. So I think for the most part, a lot of the stuff that needs to be out there for the public. Now, you could argue, what does need mean? Is it everything? Is it some things? Is it the important things?
Back to the truth conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that is portrayed, and I think a lot of that comes out, and I think a lot of it is authentic. Do I think every story that needs to be told is told? Absolutely. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
And we have tools at our disposal right now in government, and we have for a long time. There's whistleblower acts. There's things that are meant to protect employees and high-ranking civil servants that are privy to information that maybe should be available to the larger, greater populace. I guess I'm not in a position to say how often that's used. It is there. And presumably it's meant to protect you. So the tools are there. I think the culture needs to shift in a way that will be more forgiving to people that do use that more. I think you see it in little waves. I think it depends on so many things, but I think the truth is at least touched upon in many cases. Does it always get told in exactly the way that it needs to be? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
COVID aside.
Yeah.
How much sway or pressure does the federal government put on our provincial government?
In my experience, not very much. Not very much. It's kind of this like weird semi-autonomous system, right? Like in many ways, when you look at the relationship between the federal government, the provincial government, and municipal government, a lot of them could be independent little countries without ever really needing to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Which is really scary, right? When you think about it, because I come from a place where the country I originated from actually did indeed break because of that, because those ties were so weakened. And then this sense of otherness developed. Well, this government is better than that government, so we're just going to be separate governments, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're at danger of that happening here, but I think Manitoba, for the most part, can operate semi-autonomously. It doesn't, though. It does have great relationships with the federal government. Administration aside, whoever is in power, I think there's definitely something to be said about being collegial and improving those ties and relationships. Why? Not to be nice. I mean, that is great if you can be, but I think the point is to provide more to the taxpayer, to strengthen the host of your offering, whether that offering is a service, oftentimes it is a service, to the average Manitoban.
Yeah.
So if you can keep your MP in the loop, if you can have great, strong ties to Ottawa, I think that makes sense. And that often is reflected in the end result and the final outcome.
Right.
And I think it also depends on the department that we're talking about. I know that the child welfare system is really, really complex in Manitoba. I've spent about 6 years in and out of that system, not as a social worker, more as a program and policy specialist. We don't really have a lot of reason in many ways to keep those ties back to Ottawa, because we're semi-autonomous and the issues that we experience here aren't experienced in the same intensity elsewhere in Canada.
Right.
But yet we do, because legislation is really complex and these issues are really, really, really messy. And when you look at issues like serving Indigenous families and children in care that are in First Nations communities out north, I think that is a great example where the federal government absolutely needs to get involved and understand the complexity of the issues and then chime in with skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, hey, I'm here to have the conversation, but I'm actually here to contribute in a very tangible way, often financially. So I think back to your question, it just depends on the department. But, looking at it at a macro level, I mean, you could technically do that, keeping to your corners of the world, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
and still be okay-ish, which is scary, right? I think we see some of that in the complex relationship between Quebec and the rest of, right? Like,
mm-hmm. Even Ontario, Alberta, the
right,
have nots.
Right. So that'll be interesting to see, like in our lifetime, if things remain or stay, or what those relationships look like, I guess, moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I think Alberta was trying to be their own country for a while, weren't they?
Bullies. Just kidding.
So in that vein, like I think I was watching a clip where you had talked and mentioned about accountability and fiduciary responsibility of public servants. And is it your experience, or what is your experience with our current, I guess you can speak to whichever level I mean, it's probably provincial, but
mm-hmm.
with our administration,
mm-hmm.
what is the feeling you get about political accountability?
Yeah, I think before I answer that question, regardless of our administration at the moment or any future administration that may be, I think there's always like two answers to that question. And the first answer is accountability is an integral part of our Westminster model, the system that we prescribe to here. There are all sorts of checks and balances that are embedded within the fibers of the way that government operates. So on paper, it's there. And you could argue that if you hold certain positions, any position really in government, that it is your duty. You swear an oath. When I started in government, I had an oath talking about what it means to conduct myself in an accountable and ethical manner. And I imagine that's so much more intense the higher you get. Does that always perfectly end up being followed in practice? I don't know the answer to that. I have been privy to some really honorable leaders in my tenure in government, both within the government of New Brunswick. More recently, that's where I was. And then also in the government of Manitoba, people that really conduct themselves with the utmost integrity and respect for the people that they're there to serve and for the money that's entrusted within them to actually execute and provide. So I've been exposed to that. I've seen the model. I've seen how it's meant to operate. The opposite of that, I haven't been involved in, but you always hear of stories, right? And I would argue that, one of the greatest responsibility that a person has is to be trusted with being a public service. It's such a huge honor to be in a position, no matter where you are, even if you're a researcher starting off, a policy analyst, a director, executive director, all the way up to high civil servants and then politicians. It's such an honor to be in a position to actually be able to inform decisions that affect Manitobans out there. And you always do affect them, whether it's through your policy, through your advocacy work, directly or indirectly. And I think there's sometimes a lack of awareness about how that actually goes back to the taxpayer and how important that role is. And I don't know that we always understand the repercussions of those actions or inactions.
Right.
I think it just really depends on your personality and your degree of professionalism. But I don't think there's really one formula that's followed throughout government A to Z in every single department. Because these departments, 12 or 13 of them, I'm not sure how many there are right now, really are like mini, to speak in business terms, are like mini businesses in a large organization. So you see such a huge variety of different flavors of leadership, decision-making, efficiency, innovation, creativity, everything. And it's really remarkable because it's good because if you don't like the way your one little tiny business here operates, you can go to another business and it's easy to move around. That movement is so great. And you can bring your savvy and actually change things in a stale department and make it better because you've learned from your previous job. But it's also really bad because there's a degree of consistency that's inherently missing. And the recipient, the taxpayer, again, going back to what we're entrusted with, right? They don't know that there's a lack of consistency. And looking at the way we develop services from a user-centered approach or human-centered approach, and all that means for non-innovation people out there, this is sort of innovation jargon. All it means is whenever you're developing a product or service, you're inevitably putting the user at the center of everything that you do. So you're interviewing them, you're developing, you're going and testing, you're pivoting, you're changing, you're going back. So it's this iteration process. So they're the driver and you're just creating based on their vision. I think that when we look at the lack of consistency in service delivery in the construct of government internally from department to department, it doesn't serve the end user, if we follow that human-centered approach, very well because they're getting a disaggregated result, potentially. And this isn't to knock our government. I think I've seen this in East Coast governments as well, in the government in Ontario. And I think that that's something our leaders are super cognizant of. And that's also why I think that human-centered design and citizen-centric design has become such a buzzword and a popular phenomenon that we're beginning to unpack, not just with the provincial government, but municipal government and federal government as well. just like products, right? Like you wouldn't buy a pair of Nikes that haven't been tested, that aren't reflective of what that athlete actually needs in a good pair of Nikes. Why should service delivery be any different?
It shouldn't. And it's funny that is kind of the new trendy thing. Like, well, let's see what people actually want, or what's best for the people.
Right. And I think, government's always done public consultations. I don't want to create the impression that speaking to citizens wasn't a thing. It's always been a thing. But what I'm insisting on is human-centered and citizen-centered design is really about co-creation in a way that we haven't much seen before. So it's not me listening to you, Dan, in 2 or 3 consultation sessions so I can cross off a box and say, I've spoken to you and your friends, and now I understand, profess to know what you mean and what you need. It's actually consistently doing that in a long-term way at every point of that service delivery creation process, at every point of that legislative process, at every point of that whatever. So it's really less about we do this twice or 3 times a year, whatever. It's an integral part of how we actually operate and do business.
Right.
That's the difference.
So it's like the most successful companies who continually do that with their product over and over and over and over and over, and just keep refining their product nonstop.
And that's why innovation is so important, right? I think it's kind of got a bad rap in the last little bit, because it's kind of like, well, are you just a bunch of creatives out there, playing around and saying you're doing interesting things and we're never able to quantify them? I think, that's not true, because citizen-centered design does have strong flavors of innovation, because you can't de-risk your business model. You cannot overcome whatever challenge is coming your way, whether you're government, non-for-profit, a startup, whoever, if you don't understand your user, if you don't understand your citizen, if you don't understand your buyer. And the more you understand them, the more you can create a superior offering that is going to help entice them to come knocking on your door, or provide something truly amazing, and taking it one step further, actually help you overcome whatever challenge it is that is coming down the pipeline in 2 or 3 or 4 years that's going to potentially destabilize you as a business or as government. I think government sometimes gets in the habit of thinking, well, I'm a monopoly. Where else are you going to go? You're a citizen. Like, you can only get the service from me. That's not the case anymore. We see a lot of government parallel organizations that are doing things that government otherwise might have done, and doing it in a different way.
What's an example of that?
Well, health, right? Definitely something that we're looking at right now is, how do we add that degree of efficiency? But I know a ton of people that have been waiting to receive basic diagnostic services from government that should have been available to them, that is available to them, that they're unhappy with, and essentially taking their business elsewhere. Now,
we're talking like a tiered, privatized, semi-privatized system.
Or even if it's not semi-privatized, going to a different province.
Right. Yeah.
So, I don't think health's the exception. I think we see a lot of that. And even if that's not true, let's, for the sake of the argument, say, well, no, there is really no true government competitor. If I'm fundamentally unhappy with the way that government is serving me as a taxpayer, I might decide to pack my bags and actually go province over. Right? So there's always that as well. I know that recruitment and retention of professional individuals within the healthcare system is such a big focal area right now for Manitoba, for many governments, is we want you to practice being a nurse, practice being a doctor, practice being really any professional. Healthcare sector is one we hear most about, but how do we entice those people to actually set up shop here? It's not by providing shitty government services. It's by looking at what those citizens actually require, and not just them as professionals practicing in our province, but also their children and their spouses and partners. How do we smooth that process for them so they actually choose Manitoba as a destination of choice, as opposed to just another layover, right? Until something better comes along, until Vancouver becomes more affordable.
Which we might be holding our breath for a moment.
Right. We'll be holding our breath.
Yeah. So we, while you were talking, I kind of, the departments that are the monopolies at a municipal level, say water and waste,
right,
or Manitoba Hydro, where you don't have any other option, right, than to work with them. It's, I wish it were as easy as being upset with Manitoba or water and waste and then just moving. But it's easier said than done. I guess really that is trying to do something on a personal level first, right? Writing somebody, talking to your local MLA or even at a smaller level, just writing the company itself, whether it's personal. But it's a lot of times any issues that we as taxpayers or individuals have, government seems very large and it seems very slow to move. And sometimes it feels like it's a waste of time to put in your complaints. You know what I mean?
Right. And so it can be overwhelming because it's challenging understanding which levers to pull
Yep.
to convey your message or to get through, which shouldn't be the case because everybody's paying in for those services, not just the clever people, clever, whatever, people that know which levers to pull. It's everyone. And that's why I'll go back to that transparency thing that we talked about a few moments ago. Transparent, open government that has the citizens' best interests at heart in a tangible way, more than just lip service, is the new trend. And the way to get there and the way to make those services more transparent is through co-creating products, is through co-creating services, is through improving together. I can't be sitting in a dark room off the side of my desk creating something for you because that's never going to be cutting edge. That's never going to be truly innovative because I don't know, no matter how brilliant I may be and my colleagues, we don't know everything there is to know. The best experts are the people that are informing the end result in the product. It's the citizens, it's the users, it's the consumers.
Yep.
And so I think we do see, like water and waste, in your example, I think we do see that mentality of what I just mentioned really being embraced in these so-called like government monopoly areas. And I'm happy to see it, but it's going to be a slow moving change. Absolutely. Because, innovation and user-centered design and creating that alignment between the end user and your creator is really more than anything a culture shift. It's tender peopling, right? Peopling in quotation marks. And anytime you're doing anything that is about change management and transforming cultures, it takes a long ass time. It's not just a matter of 1+1=2. Here's the formula. Here's our outcome.
Yep.
It's that plus untangling mindsets and bringing people along for the ride. And that's why marketing, I would argue, is such an integral part of innovation work and creating those kinds of changes and shifts. And I don't know that that's always recognized, especially in government, where I would say that trained, refined marketing function sometimes seems to be missing. At least it was missing in the areas that I worked in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have all of this experience behind you or underneath you. You're moving into the private sector with a lot of these lessons underneath your belt. What was the hardest part? And we're moving out of government here back into your consulting. Just with one last string, what was the hardest part of your time in government versus the hardest part of moving into the private sector for yourself?
There's lots of hard things. So the hardest part of being in government for me was getting things done. And I managed to, despite, I think, some of the obstacles and barriers that you see in such a large institution. It goes without saying it would be hard to get things done because you're a large organization. But by the time that you initiate something on the ground level until the time that it's actually finally passed and furthermore finally reaches the taxpayer, the consumer, so much time
Right.
have passed. And for somebody like myself, who's very motivated and driven and likes to see the fruits of my labor very quickly.
And when your strength is getting things done.
When my strength is getting things,
Right.
that is my strength. That is my reputation. And not just getting them done, but getting them done in a collegial, respectful manner that's going to bring the right players along for the ride. It's hard. And I know sometimes, I just want to say to get things done correctly does take time. It just does. You could do things really quickly, but have missed so many marks, and then your end final product actually fails. But I think even when you do the right things and bring in the right players and do everything by the book the way you're supposed to, in government, sometimes it still takes long just because of the nature of how we're made up and the nature of the political process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where that efficiency can really go such a long way in helping speed up that process, because I think that's been such a big deterrent of so many young, motivated, ambitious people that are in government right now that see themselves setting roots there long term, is kind of dwiddling their thumbs and waiting and going, oh my gosh, by the time this actually goes anywhere, like my career here may even be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such a huge deterrent, because so many of us are reward focused. We want to see at the end of the day what's good about our job. But if you're a civil servant, it's tough. That's constantly tested. You don't get to do that. And if you do, like, heck, you're a lucky one.
Mm-hmm.
You're really, really lucky. And so for me, that was, I would say, one of the biggest challenges. The biggest challenge right now in my own practice, I would say, is not having that safety net. I mean, I do in some ways. When I started off, I kind of said I built up that degree of safety where if things should fail, it won't be mass exodus. It won't be the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But what I mean now is that safety of knowing I have 5 paid weeks of vacation, that, I know exactly what's in my pipeline 8 months from now,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't. A lot of it is just absolutely organic.
Yep.
And so for somebody that started off really liking her ducks in a row and liking that stability and liking that predictability, this is the ultimate test.
Mm-hmm. You're on the balance of freedom and security.
Yeah.
It's a very challenging one to balance moving from there. So you said you built up this kind of safety blanket behind you. Was there a few moments together that actually really just established, this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to go private. I'm going to move out of this.
Yes and no. So it's been lots of little moments. And then finally, the straw that broke the camel's back was one pivotal moment at the beginning of this year. And so I'll start with the little moments. It's kind of been like, okay, I'm independent. I like things to be done in this way, and I'm super, super efficient. I like to work with other people that can make my job easier and create a superior product. Who are those special unicorns, and finding them? So I've been kind of thinking about what that looks like, and thinking about bringing that degree of rigor and efficiency and my passion for creativity and thinking outside the box and helping create something magical and setting these organizations on their way, but doing it the way that I want to do it, the way that I've seen possible with other organizations, these masters that I've had the opportunity to learn from in the past few years. So I always kind of know, okay, so I learned that, I can do that, so I can apply it here. So it's kind of been a long time coming. I would say the ultimate decision to kind of finally move forward, because I wasn't going to do it until my son was a bit older, because my family's still fairly young. This is a huge risk in so many ways, right? I was going to do it in 5 years from now. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the year, my dad got sick, and being a tightly knit European family, we're very codependent. And I thought, I don't know what kind of help he's going to need, right? I'm not sure what kind of help my mom's going to need. And so it was sort of all hands on deck with my brother and I.
Yeah.
And long gone were the days of sort of that 9 to 5. And I was working remotely for the New Brunswick government at that time, which was very demanding, especially because it's remote. So I found myself needing to try and contribute extra hard because of that physical barrier, especially with the projects I was working on. So it kind of gave me the push that I needed, that I was thinking of taking all along. It just happened a little bit sooner than I thought it would, but it's fine.
Yeah.
And my dad's better now, thankfully. Uh, what it did was really, it's a testament to, I think, why every entrepreneur becomes an entrepreneur, is that flexibility and doing things your way and having that time and space to focus on the projects you want to focus on your timeline, as long as it meets your client's needs.
Mhm.
And I pared it back like quite a bit. I think I took on like 2 projects, one really big one smaller one that was sort of a passion project. And then all of my time was committed to helping my family and making sure that my dad can transition and have the supports he needed. So, and that really sucks to get that flexibility, we have to go into business for ourselves. I was
Mhm.
talking to a friend the other day who is expecting her second. She has a young family as well. And we were talking about how difficult it is for professional women to come back to work after the maternity leaves, um, and to show up in the way that they were used to showing up, the way that maybe they're expected to show up. Not to say that they don't work as hard. It's just that some of the flexibilities that should be afforded to people raising young families just aren't there, and that flexibility isn't always provided at a time when you need it. And if it is provided, it seems like it's one offs, again, inconsistent, depending on your manager, on the unit, whatever.
Yep.
And what we see often with younger women having families, mid-20s to, let's say, late 30s, is you just take a bow out altogether and then come back when your kids are a little bit older. And doesn't that just suck, right? What an awful case of brain drain.
If it's not what you want, right?
Right.
Yeah.
For women and people that choose to do that, great. All the power to you.
That's right.
Being a stay-at-home parent is the hardest job in the world. But for women that have something else to offer and want to offer something else, but just don't have the support to actually do that, are faced with a really difficult decision of actually leaving altogether because they're going to choose their family, right? So I'd love to see us transition into being more cognizant of that and having more leadership around the table that actually understands firsthand what those challenges are about, and then take it one step further and actually create a system and a space for us to have some of that flexibility and have that not be the exception, right?
It seems like a lot of the change. So some of the stuff you described was almost small frustrations and inefficiencies that you saw.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, myself included, quitting the fire department, it was the pain of not making that leap. So the pain of not changing. Once that became greater than the pain of, or the pain of not changing became the greater than the pain of changing. Once that balance gets out of whack, then you have to really decide what kind of life am I going to live?
Right.
Not only in my life, but mentally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because now it's starting to weigh you down if it's potentially fear that's blocking that decision. Because I know a lot of people that are in very safe jobs, very good jobs even, that want to leave, that want to do other things. And really it's either the golden handcuffs or the fear of change that is holding them back.
Yeah. 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 And I just want to say, Dan, I think it's a really privileged position for both of us to be in, to be able to even think about these things, to be able to think about being able to take on jobs and opportunities that are more value aligned and that ultimately feed our soul in some way. Because coming from a family that's really struggled, I can see that, or I have seen that many, many people are bogged down doing the nitty gritty, grunting it out, focused on whatever's immediately in front of them, which is putting that bread on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So even though whatever grunt jobs they're taking on aren't necessarily value aligned, God, they're the furthest thing from in many cases. My parents are not the exception. So many people live that way even now. They have to keep doing them and engaging them because they're not in the self-actualization part of Maslow's pyramid. They're actually just
they're still in needs, not
sustenance.
wants.
Right.
Yep.
And so, not to take away from the hard work that probably both of us have done to get to a point, where we are now to actually be in a position to say, hey, this doesn't actually feed my soul. This doesn't actually extract the best part of me. My best contributions aren't in this area. So I'm going to pause it for a bit and do something that does. Man, it takes a lifetime to get there for some people, and for others, major sacrifices. And then for others, yet it doesn't happen at all.
Yep.
And I think that's really, really painful. And that's that lack of equality that we see of opportunity, right? Because we have people that are doing all the right things in many cases, getting all the right courses under the belt, all the right designations, and still grunting and still in that survival mode. And you reach a point where you sit back and think, what gives? Like, what's the missing ingredient? I'm doing all the right things. Why is it not happening? And I see so much of that in the immigrant community. And I don't know the answer. Maybe it's the cultural part that's missing. Maybe it's the social capital. Maybe it's a bit of a personality thing. I'm not sure, but it sure is sad to see it though.
When I think of that, I always go back to when I think, what's the answer to that, right? What's the answer to, is it giving people the opportunity? Is it giving people things? Is it trying to balance out the scales of everything? The only answer that ever makes sense to me is down on the personal level. So putting the responsibility on people and them putting it on themselves, as far as what, as a person, as an individual, what makes me happy? Or how do I become happier in the current situation that I'm in, right? Personal responsibility and accountability is one of the single greatest things that I think that anyone can take on in their life that will have immediate change.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in their circumstances, but in their perspective. Right? It's a very different...
Which can then lead to a change in circumstance because, of course, it starts with perspective.
100%. Yeah. There's I always thought, how can one person see a plot of land, a vacant plot of land, and think, well, that's an ugly plot of land, and the other person see it and think like, well, there's a few $1 million of potential waiting for it, right? It's all perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting into your entire consulting now. Who is your ideal avatar? Who do you want to work with?
I want to work with the underdog. That's my ideal. Is if I like I can't practically because I mean, the underdog doesn't always
hire business consultants. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But if I could, in a perfect world, if I could choose it my way, it would be the underdog, the struggling organization, individual, just with a couple of staff that is doing freaking fantastic things in our community, but that just doesn't have the steam to keep going, doesn't know how to get what they need, whether it's money, finances, resources, partnerships, whatever, isn't a squeaky enough wheel, doesn't understand how to kind of come out of the rut and go from being reactive to proactive. And that's where that innovative part really comes in it's practical and it comes in handy. That would be my ideal person. So often those are not-for-profit charitable organizations.
Is that who you can help the most?
I think so. And I think, those are my most rewarding clients. And those are actually organizations and people who I prefer to work with. And it's really interesting working with them right now on the other side of the table. When I was in government, I worked with them indirectly, by sort of helping provide instruction and helping approve their proposals and working with them more in less in a partnership approach, but more how do I say this without it sounding icky? Sort of like a boss subordinate relationship, right? Is like we're not on the same level because we, government, are here to approve and say yay or nay to all the good stuff that you're doing. Like, who are we to do that, right? Like, you're doing awesome stuff and the numbers prove it. And whereas now I'm doing that more as equal partners.
Right.
And it is so rewarding. It's so awesome. I love it. And
are there grants that can help people work with you?
Absolutely. There's a ton of grants, but sometimes the problem is the grants that are available out there really, A, aren't substantial enough. B, the organizations and their needs don't match up to all the criteria that's under that grant.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why there's a ton of gray area. And the things that some of these organizations need, no grant can perfectly really address. And also grants are finite. We have 6 or 7 organizations in any given that are competing for any given grant, right? So those grants are going to be then, of course, offered to the organizations that are the beefiest, that have the most people, that are arguably already fairly established because they know how to write a kick-ass proposal.
Right.
So again, underdog, don't have those resources, are doing great work, valuable stuff, helping move things along, whether it's with kids in care, addictions, youth employment, whatever, affordable housing. I'm big on affordable housing. It was one of my favorite portfolios when I was in government. And so those are the individuals I prefer to work with. And I always try to make sure that I have one or two of those types of clients that I'm working with. So usually one or two big projects, probably not in the non-for-profit sector, but those are still great files
What do they look like? Who can you help the most in the non-for-profit
sector, staying on that one. It's really anybody that is seeking to strengthen their relationships with government and navigate the big mammoth that is government right now.
Absolutely.
And knowing which doors to knock on. Having spent so many years there, regardless of administration, I've spent time in both administrations, both the NDP and the Conservative government. I have critical relationships to help these organizations kind of be heard. Can't always promise money, but at least brokering those relationships. And then I understand where the loopholes are to help support projects in a financial way. And also more of the practical stuff like writing the proposals themselves and any other formal documentation that they would actually need to secure to keep their business going. So yeah, anything from relationship to bringing in more partners on the table to actually getting them the money so they can keep doing the great things that they're doing.
Yep.
So again, I don't really care what area that's in. To me, it's more important that they have what they need because they're really who we rely on. They're the ones that actually, hopefully this isn't unpopular, they're the ones that make government look good, right? They're the ones doing the sticky work out in the community. They're the ones that understand the vulnerable Manitobans the most because they're providing services directly to them, a lot of the time through government help and assistance. But a lot of time it's private grants as well, money secured through high net worth individuals, foundations, things like that.
Right.
So for me, it's just taking it one step further and promulgating and telling their story in a more comprehensive, broader way and making sure all the right partners are on the table. So yeah, I hope to, be able to do more of that. Other clients I've worked with are really anywhere from any cause, right? It doesn't matter if it's healthcare or education or whatever. They can be publicly traded companies, but it's generally companies that have a profound gap. They're either growing too fast for their own good and don't know how to kind of pause a little bit and develop a degree of foresight, right? And develop that roadmap for growth and make sure that they're focusing on the right things. And again, that's where we spend some time doing strategy work. That's where we spend some time doing leadership training. That's where we spend some time focused on citizen and user-centered design. And my job is always such that when I walk away from our time together, I want to make sure that you're in a better position than you were before I came on. So I'm not motivated by doing a fancy 60-page report that collects dust somewhere on a shelf after I walk off and say, here's my deliverable. Thank you. I can provide you with a report if that's what you want. But my job is more to provide practical tools. I want to make sure I'm kind of running myself out of a job so you don't need to hire me again. I don't want you, if you're knocking on my door for the same thing that you did, that you knocked on my door for 6 months ago, I haven't done my job. You need to be in a better position. You need those tangible skills that you can then keep implementing and keep doing without me. So, I think there's really a need for that in any industry, in any organization. It's just that you see it more in startups and charitable non-for-profits.
So smaller to medium-sized business. Is there some trends that you've noticed that are kind of where people get caught up the most?
Everybody seems to be really, really big on process improvement, which is great. I think, I'm an efficient person. I love being efficient. I love for my process to be efficient and get to the end goal as soon as possible, but not if it's at the expense of missing the broader picture, missing that perspective, missing that opportunity for creativity and creating something that isn't just taking an existing piece and improving it, but adding a net new piece.
Okay.
And as great as process improvement and efficiency and sort of these lean Six Sigma, like, these are all manufacturing terms, as great as they are, and as much as governments out there have embraced them, and they have, and it's been wonderful. I think one thing that's missing there again is there's little space for reinventing something and adding something net new. It doesn't lend itself very nicely to creativity in every case. Can it complement the innovative creative process? Absolutely. But there needs to be a commitment to both efficiency and process improvement, as well as innovation. And I think where I see companies doing the most, some of the best stuff, for instance, in government in New Brunswick, several departments that have adopted both mindsets have done remarkable things and have really, really managed to retain people that I think otherwise would have left, because it's kind of this tension between rigidity, which let's say is the process improvement, because it is very efficient and it's by the book, right? It's this tension between strictness, rigidity, efficiency, combined with the latitude to try, embrace failure as long as you move, learn, and keep going so you can add something greater and better than you had before. That combination, sparks fly. It's truly amazing. So that's something I think a lot of organizations are thinking about. I still see a lot more preference on process improvement than the other, though. And I think it's a huge opportunity missed. I really do.
Yeah. Are you working with people more based in Winnipeg, or sorry, I shouldn't say people, but companies in Winnipeg, or is this nationwide? Is it international?
Not international, it's nationwide right now. While a lot of my clients and customers are Winnipeg, Manitoba-based organizations, I should say, companies that are familiar with my work. Some of them aren't, but usually folks that I've met through the grapevine and have loved working with now. I definitely, just through having traveled coast to coast during my tenure in the private sector and in government as well, I've met lots of organizations that have real needs around affordability, affordable housing, and other issues that have now solicited some of my help and who I'm working with right now. So remote work is nothing that scares me. I've done it for about 2.5 years with my last job before I went into consulting, and I continue to do it now. And the great part is I get to pick and choose which ones I work on and where. I don't know if I stick with this. I haven't thought about whether or not I really want to focus more Canada-wide or Manitoba-wide. But for right now, it's nice kind of to have that mix. It's about 80-20, 80 in Manitoba and 20 elsewhere. Yeah.
Talk to me about entrepreneurship versus intrapreneurship. Because when I look at this, I look at it from most people are entrepreneurs or could be. I don't know if everyone wants to be within their organization, but they can be. The only thing, and I think that when I think about it, the greatest or the simplest, most powerful way that I look at it comes down to the ideology of make yourself invaluable. Make it so the company cannot work without you. As far as you are their most important asset, you get things done. You can ask for anything you want. You can even negotiate positions anywhere where it's allowed, whatever you want. That to me is how people get ahead within organizations, or at least can get that entrepreneurial feeling within something that's not theirs. How do you look at it?
I have to respectfully disagree with you, Dan. I hope you're okay with that.
1,000%.
Okay. I think what fuels entrepreneurship, which is essentially being an entrepreneur within an organization as opposed to out, is democratizing ideas and not making yourself indispensable and not making yourself a unicorn. It's actually democratizing and replicating both the tools and mindsets that have gotten you where you are so you can bring others along for the ride. If you look at a typical product adoption curve, the bell curve, right? You look at how products move through the cycle. And so you look at, so at the beginning of the curve, you have sort of an uphill battle. It's people that are laggards, really like not wanting to adopt, resisting, like risk averse to the max. You have the people at the top who are kind of like agnostic, right? Like they could go either which way. Then you have people that have adopted it and they're well on their way. Those are the easy ones.
Yeah.
If you're looking at moving ideas, if you're an innovator, an entrepreneur, you're an idea holder, you're a visionary, right? By that very nature of the word, you are not focusing so much on the ones that are behind you that have drank the Kool-Aid. You're focusing on not even the resistors, you're focusing on those in the middle and you're working on persuading them. And you work with the willing. And if they've drank the Kool-Aid, they've made your job so much easier because then those ones that are resisting have no choice. They either come along for the ride or they drop off. But the idea of democratizing your ideas and moving away from being the only holder of ideas and knowledge to now replicating that is that others have an opportunity to do your job for you as well. So you're taking yourself away from the position of being the only one moving an idea or thought forward, which is freaking exhausting. Trust me, having done that and trying to transform organizations by moving and trying to sell something, an idea or product, and being the only one or one of maybe 3 or 4 people, it's tiring. And the organizational antibodies eventually get to you and they break you down and you get sick, right? To use the analogy. Or you just get tired and you fail. And that's why corporate innovation often fails, right? Or corporate entrepreneurship. But if you can share some of that knowledge, work with a few willing, they take that idea, replicate, they share with their friends. Before you know it, it's not just 3 people that are behind you. It's a whole unit, God forbid, a whole organization. Now you've really won. And then really you move yourself away from being an entrepreneur because then the entire organization starts to think and look that way. So we're all entrepreneurial. We're all entrepreneurial. All of a sudden, you have this like amazing organization that's bought and is using these ideas and tools and keeps redefining some of those thoughts at the same speed and cadence that you would, except you're no longer doing it yourself. That's the beauty. And it's really freaking hard. And I'll use the word that I did before, which is peopling. It's all about people management, change management, and really having that political, small p, political savvy and knowing how to be a great leader. So it's not just having the business savvy and understanding business concepts, economic concepts, entrepreneurial concepts. It's really coupling that off with being a convincing leader, that charismatic leader whom others will trust and want to follow along for the ride. It's a hard ass combination. I haven't seen much of that, but the organizations that do it well, like they do it fantastic. Amazon's done a really, really great job with that. I went to a Las Vegas conference in 2018 where their chief innovation officer talked about how they managed to do that in such a prolific organization. And it really, really does make sense. And they actually don't have an innovation office. So we've seen lots of organizations the past few years move away from having an innovation secretariat or innovation office, this sort of like standalone tower off the side of the organization. These creatives work there. It creates a sense of otherness. What the hell do you even do there? Are you wasting time? Are you wasting money? Nobody can relate to these people. They're magical little butterflies that get to do whatever they want, or at least that's the concept. That's what others think. Yeah. What Amazon's done is, they've taken a few individuals that are willing to spend some time learning the craft for 3 months and sent them right back to the organizations and units that they came from. There's no opportunity to stay there. It's like a secondment. You spend some time learning the craft, you go and apply that craft. Yeah. And then I work with somebody else. Before you know it, you're cloning them. You're evangelizing the entire organization. And there's no need for an innovation office. There's no need for entrepreneurship. I mean, there still is. You still need visionaries, but the idea is you're not the only one. You're spreading the word. I'm all for spreading the word. I'm all for making ideas and resources available to the masses as opposed to hoarding.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, so for me, if someone is to make themselves invaluable to a company, it's because they're helping the company become greater than it was prior. right? And that is, and we've seen this in many examples, as far as like, firing the number one salesman because he's a cancer to the culture or whatever, right? But at the same time, most of what I heard you describing is people adopting innovation. They're adopting the strategies. They're working within it, but from their own personal perspective, is they are doing stuff to the best of their ability. They are trying to lead not only themselves but other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for anyone that is invaluable to a company, is they do all those things and they embody all of the things that are important.
You could argue that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no accident. If you're able to hit on all of those marks, then you're probably doing something right, and it's probably fairly intentional.
Right.
Yeah.
What's something that you think or that you've run into in consulting that people come in and they often have misconceptions about what you do?
Come in and fix this in 5 minutes. No surprise, right?
Yeah. Fix me. I'm broken.
Fix this organization. Or what's more common is, fix the culture, because I don't have time to fix the culture.
Right.
Culture's hard. It is what you make it. And it starts from both the bottom up and the top down.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like it works at both levels and it kind of converges somewhere in the middle. And you're not separate from the culture as a leader who's wanting to bring in the consultant. You are reflective of it. You are the culture. It's like the person in traffic. It's like, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. You are the traffic. You're the traffic.
Yeah.
You're the culture. So bringing in a consultant to do that, it's hard work. And I would argue consultants can't really fix culture. You can't. You're an outsider. To spend time in an organization is critical and pivotal to actually helping figure out a plan forward. Yeah. I would say it's impossible to develop a roadmap to fix anything, least of all culture work, without having spent some serious time setting your roots and getting messy and immersed entirely within that culture. And that takes a lot of months and sometimes years to do before you even think about developing that roadmap or a solution or a path forward. I can build you some bullshit solution or an outcome that looks good that you can extract from a textbook. It's going to be generic and not perfectly reflective of the specific and unique issue at hand that keeps you up at night. So be leery of anyone. This is for whoever's listening. Be leery of anyone that comes in and promises to fix something within 2 or 3 months. Like, unless it's a fairly straightforward issue, there are exceptions, obviously. When we're talking about transformation, change management, leadership, HR, that shit takes time. If they're promising you a solution in a very short amount of time, be curious. Ask many questions. Something isn't fitting. You have to understand it before you fix it. That's my own.
Right. The bigger the boat, the harder it is to turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slower it is.
Yeah.
On a personal level, people are what they do consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that's what culture is, right? It seems like it's And so if it's consistency over time, then it's time that you need to be doing different things to create a new culture.
Exactly. It's tough though, because everybody wants a quick fix, right? And that's why we hire consultants. But there is no quick fix for something so tender and dire and worthy of our time and investment. Yeah. The more you can do that upfront work, the better the outcome will be. Yeah. But part of it is really about bringing folks along for the ride. And any consulting gig, any consulting product that is related to transformation or culture or innovation in some way has to be done with the team. It can't be done behind closed doors, because what happens when the consultant leaves and delivers the report is somebody has to implement this. And if your employees, if your A stars and B stars and C stars haven't had a direct hand in creating or being informed or providing feedback in some way, it's freaking useless. Yep. It's just a fancy report that you've spent some money on. So, and again, like, that's the biggest point of resistance sometimes. It's like, that's why we brought you in. These people don't have time. We need for them to do the day to day. It's like, well, it's important to create some space for that as well.
Right.
So again, going back to the co-creation, I'm a big fan of that. I don't want to be doing anything in a silo off the side of my desk without asking for those critical opinions. It really is important.
Right. Absolutely. Why have you stayed in Winnipeg? What do you love about
I
Winnipeg?
ask myself sometimes.
And what do you hate about Winnipeg?
I don't love our winters. I was born on the Mediterranean. Yeah. I'm used to warm weather and the sea, and my family, my baba is on the Adriatic coast. So I love my warm weather. So when it's minus 40, I really get the itch to go somewhere, as most people do. What I love is the community. I mean, who doesn't? It sounds like a cliche, but my parents chose Winnipeg for a reason. They had an option back in the 90s of going anywhere, Montreal, Quebec City, whatever, Winnipeg. They chose Winnipeg because of the great reputation it had even back then.
Mm-hmm.
Friendly Manitoba. It's a big city, but it's small because we're a community. There was, a little bit of a Yugoslavian community back then. So it made it more familiar for them to actually face all the newness.
Yep.
And I feel that all the time. Like I feel genuinely welcomed every time I go somewhere and I come back into this city. I mean, obviously we have our own issues, as does everybody else. And I just want to be a part of solutionizing that. I want to be a part of that's why I'm doing my own consultancy. That's why I prefer to work with organic organizations in the non-for-profit sector, because I want to see the fruits of my labor. I want to contribute to that change as opposed to running away from it when the going gets tough. And it is tough. We're pressured. All it takes is to take a walk downtown and you see it. I want to see what happens, and I want to have a direct hand in kind of helping move the needle forward there. I love it. I love what we're about. We're gritty. We're hardworking. All things that are personal values of mine. So
you put anyone through one of our winters, and they get some grit to them.
Yeah.
How do you see? So you have you mentioned a son.
Yes.
How do you? Is that your only one? How do you balance? How do you look at family? What does that look like in your day to day? Not only, back when you used to work for government, but now that you are, have something constantly on your mind.
Being intentional about those transitions. And it's hard. I haven't figured that out yet. Maybe you have. I know you have kids too, but something I've been working on lately is just really when he's with me, giving him my undivided attention for those 3 hours or whatever it is before bed, and not multitasking, and literally putting my phone on pause. And then if I need to come back to it post 8 p.m., I do that. But, it's really sad because when you think about it, we don't actually have a lot of time with them, especially if somebody else is raising them, especially if they're in daycare and then when they start school and things like that. And we're so busy in hustle culture and so wrapped up. And that's part of the reason, aside from my family's health issues that I mentioned, it's part of the reason I decided to start my own business at the time that I did, is because he may be my only one, right? I'm not actually sure if we're going to have more kids. And I just want to show up for him, and I don't want to have missed a beat. I don't want to look back on that and say, oh my God, I was so busy getting my business up and running. I was so busy getting this assignment or this briefing note in or this report that I totally forget 2.5 to 3.5. Totally forgot. I don't want that regret. I want to show up for him in a way that my parents didn't have the luxury of showing up for me. And I'm sure I'll miss the mark in some ways, but I don't want to miss the mark in that way.
Yeah.
And so, just being intentional, and it's kind of a constant challenge, and we're always distracted. So I actually turn my notifications, all of them are off on my phone. Like unless I'm intentionally going into an app or a message, like I have no idea who's sending me what. Of course, if it's for a client or a project or something, those things I turn on just as a need to know. But everything else on my socials, or those friends messages, you have like chains that go on and on and on. It's just all off.
Yeah,
I
that'll get you
30 minutes aside at the end of the day, and I catch up on that. And so just having some of that structure has really helped me be present for him. And
you're routined? Is your day routine?
Yes and no. It's routine in the evening when he's done, because it has to be in order for us to get everything done that we want to get done. Yeah. But during the day, I do have quite a bit of flexibility with the kind of client stuff that I'm working on. Is really, really wonderful. Like with the exception of meeting deadlines, I can work from wherever I want to work from, which is great. I can be in control of how fast I work, how slow I work, as long as it meets the client's deadlines, how many projects I take on. If I want to have like 6 clients for a 3-month mark or 2 clients, whatever. So it is flexible in that way. And for me, that's part of the charm. That's, again, part of the reason why I'm doing this. I need that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to be respectful of your time. And I'm sure we could actually go on for a few more hours. But you knew you were coming here. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't? But is there anything important to you that really, I know you're involved in the community, you're a board member. What is it that, really gets you going about Winnipeg and just being involved in the community?
Nothing is too far out of reach, I feel, in Winnipeg, which is great. Like we're a big city, we're a major metropolis-ish in Canada, but nothing's too hard. I'm not talking about things like distance, getting from point A to point B, but we were talking about political office earlier before you started recording and politics and women in politics. And those are things I've been thinking about for a long time. And how do we support more women in public office? And for a long time, you would look at these glamorous positions and individuals and think like, oh my gosh, that's so not available to the average Joe or Jane. But accept that it is, right? And not just because of Winnipeg being what it is, I think because of social media and so many other things, but in Winnipeg in particular, because it's just that much speedier to leverage what you need to leverage to actually get there. It's a little bit easier, simpler to get the exposure that you need to get you to that next level, right? Or at least in my opinion. So I find it easier to actually get things done here because, and maybe that's because I've spent most of my life here and I know which doors to knock on. I know which organizations do which work. I know who to connect. I'm not sure if I would feel this way if I was somewhere else.
Right.
But I feel like anything's possible here. I really do. And I just look at my parents as well. They're both university educated. My mom was a lawyer back in the old country. My dad, an engineer. And they've totally reinvented themselves, especially for my dad, from scratch. Like went to university all over again with 2 little kids, no money. And I just think that's freaking remarkable. Like that is tenacity to a T. And if they could do that, like, man, I could do anything. And like, what a great example to have, I think, in life to look back and to see that. And I think that's my advantage. I don't think everybody's had those important, strong role models. As little as we had growing up, I think that's the biggest gift that they could have given us. And I'm so lucky for it. So Winnipeg's great for it. I don't know if they would have done the same thing had they been somewhere else, but it's easy to navigate stuff. We're friendly and you know where everything is.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Did you expect that? Maybe everybody would say that. I'm not sure, but everybody always says friendly Manitobans, but we just want to help each other.
No, it really is.
Sense of community,
Yeah. In the most part.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. How do people get a hold of you? How do they reach out to you?
Yeah. So just through my socials, I am very, very active on LinkedIn, Sandra Hodzic, or on my website, www.sandrahodzic.com. Shoot me a message through there and I'd be happy to collaborate. So.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing your experience and opinion. And you are welcome back anytime, especially when you decide to run for office.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Give me a little bit of time. Don't hold your breath.
I like it. Okay. Thanks so much for being on.
Take care.